They say a house is just bricks, wood, and paint. But to me, my grandmother's house was everything. It wasn't just a place where we slept after long family gatherings. It was the heartbeat of our family, the smell of freshly baked bread wafting from the kitchen, the laughter echoing off the walls during holiday dinners, the endless stories Grandma told while we sat cross-legged on her living room rug. Every Sunday, without fail, we'd pile into her house. The old oak table would groan under the weight of mashed potatoes, roasted chicken, casseroles, and her famous apple pie. Grandma would hum while stirring pots, wearing her faded apron, and when we'd ask her why she never wrote her recipes down, she'd chuckle and say, "Because the heart is the real secret ingredient." That house was love made physical. So when Grandma died, it felt like the heartbeat stopped. I remember the phone call vividly. My dad's voice cracking on the other end, "She's gone, John." Just like that. No warning, no last goodbye. I dropped my phone, sat on the edge of my bed, and let the silence press down on me until I couldn't breathe. The funeral was a blur, black clothes, hollow condolences, tissues passed down pews. I barely heard the prayers. I just stared at her photo framed with white lilies. She looked so alive in that picture, smiling like she always did when she caught someone sneaking an extra slice of pie. For a brief moment, it felt like grief had united us. My aunts, uncles, cousins, we cried together, hugged tightly, spoke about how much she meant. I thought, naively, that maybe this tragedy would remind us what family really is. But that illusion shattered the moment someone asked the question nobody wanted to say out loud. "So, what happens to the house?" I didn't think much of it at first. Surely Grandma, being as thoughtful as she was, would have left a will. Something clear. Something fair. But when we asked her lawyer, the answer was blunt. There was no will. Nothing written. Nothing official. It hit me like a punch to the gut. How could there be nothing? Grandma was meticulous about everything else in life, labeling jars in the pantry, writing notes in birthday cards months in advance. But this? She'd left behind silence. And in that silence, greed found a voice. At first, everyone tried to stay civil. At the reception after the funeral, my Aunt Linda sipped her wine and said, "Well, maybe we should just sell it and split the money equally. That seems fair." Her brother, my Uncle Rick, nearly choked on his drink. "Sell it? That's our mother's home. You don't sell family history like it's a used car." Dad sighed heavily, muttering, "Maybe we should all just take some time. It's too soon to talk about this." I wanted to agree with him. But I saw it in their eyes, Aunt Linda's sharp calculating stare, Uncle Rick's jaw set like stone, my cousins whispering in corners like they were already dividing the spoils. It was as if Grandma's death had cracked something open, and now the rot was spilling out. In the weeks that followed, I spent a lot of time at the house alone. I'd sit on the porch swing, the wood creaking under my weight, and close my eyes. If I listened hard enough, I could almost hear her voice. "John, bring me the flour from the pantry, will you?" But when I walked through the rooms, I started noticing little things missing. A lamp here. The painting there. The good silverware from the dining room. It didn't take a genius to figure out what was happening. Relatives were helping themselves, little souvenirs, before the dust even settled. The first time I confronted my cousin Mark, he just shrugged. "Come on, John. She would have wanted me to have this clock. Remember how I used to fix it for her?" I bit my tongue so hard it hurt. Grandma would have wanted us to share. She would have wanted us to honor her. But this wasn't honoring her. This was scavenging. I remember looking at the mantel where her old Bible used to sit. Gone. The space looked naked, violated. That's when the realization hit me. Without a will, the house wasn't just property. It was a battlefield. And everyone thought they had a right to claim it. Everyone except me. I didn't want the house for its walls, or its market value. I wanted it because it was her. Because every corner held her memory. Because selling it would feel like selling her soul. But in a family like mine, sentiment wasn't currency. Greed was. The first official family meeting was a disaster before it even began. We gathered in the living room, the same room where Grandma used to tell us ghost stories during thunderstorms. Now, the air was thick with tension. Aunt Linda cleared her throat dramatically. Let's not drag this out. The best option is to sell the house, split it 4 ways, and move on. Uncle Rick slammed his fist on the coffee table. Over my dead body. I've lived in this town all my life. I'll buy it from the rest of you if I have to. But I'm not letting strangers move into Mom's house. Dad rubbed his temples. Rick, you don't have that kind of money. Be realistic. Linda smirked. Exactly. Which is why selling is the only option. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, accusations flying. My cousin Sarah snapped at Rick. You're just trying to play hero so you can keep it for yourself. Rick shot back. At least I care about family, unlike you money grubbers. I sat there, silent, my hands clenched. Inside, I was boiling. This wasn't grief. This was greed dressed in morning clothes. And the ugliest part? I could feel them eyeing me too. I wasn't just a bystander. I was a piece of the equation. A vote. A pawn. Maybe even an obstacle. That night as I drove home, my chest felt heavy. I kept replaying Grandma's words in my head. Family is supposed to protect each other, John. Not tear each other apart. But that's exactly what we were doing. And deep down I knew this was only the beginning. The house wasn't just a house anymore. It was a prize. A war trophy. And wars don't end without casualties. Grief has a strange way of fading into background noise when money gets involved. At first, everyone played nice. We'd gather at Grandma's house under the guise of cleaning or sorting, but the truth was, everyone was staking their claim. The house creaked with tension, footsteps echoing like rival armies circling the battlefield. I started noticing patterns. My Aunt Linda always arrived early and left late, carrying small boxes to her car. My cousin Sarah would linger in Grandma's bedroom, rifling through drawers like a burglar with a shopping list. My Uncle Rick spent hours pacing the property line, muttering about market value and fair deals, like he was already a realtor preparing a listing. And me? I just sat on the porch swing, listening to the wood groan beneath me, asking myself how the family I grew up with had turned into strangers overnight. The first real fight broke out over the china cabinet. It was a Tuesday evening, everyone buzzing around like bees in a hive. Aunt Linda stood in the dining room, her hand resting possessively on the glass doors. "This is antique," she said, her voice firm. "It belongs with me. I've always admired it." Uncle Rick scoffed. Admired it? You never set foot in this house unless it was Thanksgiving. That cabinet should stay with the house. It's part of the dining room. Linda narrowed her eyes. Or maybe you just want to keep it so you can sell it later. Don't think I don't see what you're doing, Rick. Rick's face turned red. What I'm doing? You're the one who started stripping the place like it's a thrift store. The air turned thick. My cousins exchanged glances, waiting for someone to break it up. I finally spoke. Hey, maybe we should slow down. It's just furniture. Linda snapped her head toward me. Just furniture? Do you have any idea what this set is worth? Your grandmother paid good money for it. Rick cut in, his voice sharp. You mean our mother? That silenced her for a moment, but the damage was done. The cabinet stayed put that night, but the crack had widened. It didn't stop there. 2 days later, I caught Sarah sneaking one of Grandma's pearl necklaces into her purse. Seriously? I asked, leaning in the doorway of the bedroom. She froze like a kid with her hand in the cookie jar. It's just one necklace, John. She would have wanted me to have it. My jaw tightened. Funny, that's what Mark said when he took the clock. You people keep deciding what she would have wanted. But none of you actually asked her when she was alive, did you? Her face hardened. Don't you dare judge me. You think sitting on the porch looking sad makes you better than us? Newsflash, you're just as entitled as the rest of us. I didn't answer. Because maybe she was right. Maybe by doing nothing, I was letting them turn Grandma's legacy into scraps. The second family meeting was worse than the first. We gathered again in the living room, the curtains drawn against the late afternoon sun. Dust motes swirled in the air like tiny ghosts, as if Grandma herself was watching the circus unfold. Aunt Linda started with her usual line, "We need to sell the house. It's the only logical solution." Uncle Rick fired back, "Over my dead body." Then Sarah chimed in, arms crossed. "If we keep the house, who pays for the taxes? The repairs? Because I'm not throwing my money into this sinkhole." Mark smirked. "Then sell it and split it. Problem solved." My dad leaned forward, voice low but sharp. "You all sound like vultures. Do you hear yourselves? This was your mother's home. My mother's home. And you're already carving it up like a carcass." For a second, the room went silent. Then Linda's voice, cold as steel, "Don't act holier now, David. You think I don't know you've been looking into refinancing? Maybe you want the house for yourself." Dad's face flushed. "That's a lie." Linda smirked. "Is it?" The room erupted again, shouting, accusations, fingers pointing. It wasn't a family meeting anymore. It was war council. I just sat back, watching, my stomach twisting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through the house in the dark, the floorboards creaking under my feet. I stopped in Grandma's bedroom. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the air, lavender and something warm I couldn't name. Her quilt was neatly folded at the foot of the bed. For a moment, I almost expected her to walk in, pat my shoulder, and tell me everything would be okay. But the silence was heavy. As I stood there, I noticed the jewelry box on her dresser had been emptied. Completely gone. My heart sank. It wasn't about the necklace or the silver or the furniture anymore. It was about what those things represented. Memories, love, history, stripped away piece by people who claimed to love her. I whispered into the empty room, "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry." By the end of that week, the gloves came off. Linda hired a lawyer to look into options. Rick started shouting about squatters' rights and how he'd move in if he had to. Sarah whispered rumors at family gatherings, saying my parents were trying to cheat everyone, saying I was hoarding things in secret. The worst moment came when I caught Mark outside, shoving boxes into his car. "Really?" I asked, stepping into the driveway. He jumped, then straightened. "Back off, John." I walked closer. "What's in the box?" He sneered. "None of your business." I grabbed the flap of the cardboard and yanked it open. Inside were framed photos, Grandma's recipe book, and her Bible. My chest burned. "You're stealing her memories." Mark shoved me back. "They're mine just as much as yours." We stood there, glaring at each other in the dim light of the porch lamp. For a second, I thought we'd come to blows. Finally, he slammed the trunk shut and snarled, "You can't stop me." Then he drove off, tires screeching against the pavement. I stood in the dust cloud, fists clenched, rage boiling in my veins. That was the moment I realized, this wasn't just greed. It was betrayal. And if I wanted to honor Grandma, truly honor her, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Grief had already curdled into greed, but now it was mutating into something worse, open warfare. By the time we hit the second week after Grandma's funeral, the family had stopped pretending. Nobody talked about memories anymore. Nobody cooked her recipes or sat around reminiscing in the living room. The house wasn't Grandma's house now. It was just a prize, a trophy, a lump of bricks, and would everyone thought they deserved more than the next person. And me? I was stuck in the middle, watching the people I grew up with sharpen their knives. It was a Saturday evening, humid and sticky, when we held what would become known, at least in my mind, as the explosion. We gathered around Grandma's oak table. That table had seen decades of Thanksgiving dinners, birthday cakes, and family arguments that usually blew over by dessert. This one, though, wasn't going to blow over. Linda started first, of course. She always did. I spoke with my lawyer, she announced, setting a thick folder down like it was a royal decree. Without a will, the estate should be divided equally among us siblings. That means the house gets sold and the money is split. It's the only fair way. Rick leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Fair for you, maybe. You've got your suburban palace. Selling this place means nothing to you. But I live paycheck to paycheck. You think I'm giving up the one asset Mom left behind? Linda scoffed. Asset? This is a money pit. The roof leaks. The foundation's cracked. The longer we hang on to it, the worse it gets. Rick slammed a fist on the table, rattling the glasses of water. Over my dead body. My dad finally spoke up, voice calm but sharp. Rick, pounding your fist won't fix the roof. Linda's right about one thing. We can't pretend this house is perfect. But selling it isn't the only answer. Linda's eyes narrowed. Oh, here we go. Let me guess, you want to keep it. Move in. Play the noble son who preserves Mom's legacy. That's not what I said. But it's what you're thinking. The room buzzed like a hornet's nest. Sarah and Mark, my cousins, shifted uncomfortably. Then Sarah piped up, her tone falsely sweet. Look, maybe Uncle David does want the house. That would explain why John's been so protective, wouldn't it? Always lurking around, watching us, judging us for taking what's rightfully ours. All eyes turned to me. My stomach dropped. Excuse me? Sarah leaned forward, smirking. Come on, John. You think we don't notice? You practically guard this place like a watchdog. Maybe you and your dad think you're entitled to more than the rest of us. I felt my cheeks burn. That's not what this is about. Linda cut me off. It's exactly what this is about. Don't play innocent. If you wanted to honor Mom, you'd let us settle this like adults instead of acting like the house belongs to you. My voice cracked with anger. I'm not the one stealing necklaces and recipe books in the middle of the night. Sarah's face flushed crimson. You little... Enough! Dad barked, slamming his palm on the table. The room went still. But the damage was done. The accusations were out there now, poisoning the air. A few days later, I got a call from one of Grandma's neighbors, Mrs. Klein. John, she said, her voice low and worried, I thought you should know. I saw your cousin at the courthouse this morning. He was asking about property records. Something didn't feel right. My heart skipped. Which cousin? He had a folder. Looked nervous. I thanked her, hung up, and felt a cold dread creep into my chest. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I went snooping through some of the paperwork Mark had left lying around in his car while it sat in the driveway. I know it was wrong, but what I found made my blood run cold. Photocopies of property deeds. Drafts of signatures. And one page that looked eerily like Grandma's handwriting, except not quite. He was trying to forge her signature. Trying to create a will that gave him the house outright. I sat there in the dark, the papers trembling in my hands, fury coursing through me. How dare he? Grandma loved us all. She would never play favorites like that. And here was Mark, desecrating her memory with lies and ink. For the first time, I understood what real betrayal felt like. The forgery wasn't the only thing. Word spread, and fast. At the next gathering, Sarah cornered me near the kitchen. "Nice trick," she hissed. "Telling everyone I stole from Grandma's jewelry box. Real classy." I froze. "I didn't." "Oh, save it. You think smearing me makes you look better? Guess what? People are starting to talk about you." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" She leaned in closer, her perfume choking me. "They're saying you're manipulating Uncle David. That you're pushing him to keep the house so you can live here rent-free. Everyone sees through you, John." I laughed bitterly. "Everyone sees through me? You're the one spreading lies because you can't admit you're wrong." She sneered. "Keep laughing. When this is over, you'll be the one with nothing." She walked away, heels clicking like nails in a coffin. I stood there, my chest tight, realizing how far the rot had spread. It wasn't just greed anymore. It was lies, manipulation, betrayal, a full-blown war for Grandma's legacy. That night, lying in Grandma's old bedroom, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me. My fists clenched in the dark. I thought about Linda's smug voice, Rick's fist on the table, Sarah's venom, Mark's forged papers. I thought about Grandma, how she used to say, "Family is the only thing you can't replace." And I thought about how wrong she'd been. Family can be replaced. Or maybe it just replaces itself with greed when the matriarch is gone. For weeks I had stayed quiet, played the observer, let them dig their own graves. But enough was enough. If they wanted to tear each other apart, fine. But I wasn't going to let them bury Grandma's memory under their lies. I had my own plan. My own revenge. Not fire, not fists, not even lawsuits. Something quieter, smarter, deadlier. Revealing the truth. And when I did, there'd be no going back. For weeks, I had stood in the shadows of my own family's chaos, watching, absorbing, trying to believe that somehow things would settle down. But Act 3 broke something inside me. The forgery. The lies. The smugness in Sarah's voice when she told me I'd end up with nothing. No, I couldn't just wait anymore. It was time to fight back. But not with fists. Not with screaming matches across Grandma's dining table. My revenge had to be quieter, cleaner, impossible to deny. And above all, it had to sting. I spent late nights going through Grandma's old files, the dusty boxes in the attic that nobody bothered with because they were more interested in shiny jewelry and valuable antiques. Inside, I found letters. Handwritten ones, dated over decades. Her writing was unmistakable, graceful loops, slightly tilted. I compared it to Mark's forged draft, and the difference was like night and day. His version was clumsy, uneven. Anyone with eyes could tell. I scanned everything, made digital backups, and tucked the originals into a fireproof lockbox. Next, I reached out to Mrs. Klein, the neighbor who had tipped me off about Mark's courthouse stunt. She agreed to testify if things went that far. "Your grandma was too kind to raise vultures," she told me, shaking her head. "But I'll do whatever it takes to help you." Her words lit a fire in me. For once, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. The next family meeting was at Linda's house. She insisted it was neutral territory, but everyone knew she wanted to control the space. Her dining room looked like a boardroom. Leather chairs, polished table, folders stacked neatly at every seat. I walked in with my backpack slung over my shoulder, trying to look casual, though my pulse thumped like a war drum. Inside that backpack were the scans, the lockbox key, and a small recorder I had borrowed from a friend. Linda opened the meeting like a judge. "We need to make a decision tonight. The house cannot sit in limbo forever." Rick grumbled, "Decisions already made. Nobody's selling." Sarah rolled her eyes. "You don't get to decide, Rick." "None of us do," Unless we make it fair. That's when Mark slid his folder across the table. Actually, he said smoothly, I think we do have a decision. He pulled out the fake will. My stomach clenched. This, he said, voice steady, is Grandma's last testament. I was going to wait until it was official, but given all the fighting, I think we should settle this now. She left the house to me. Silence. Deadly silence. Then Linda exploded. What? Rick shot to his feet. You lying piece of... Mark held up his hands. I know it's hard to hear, but Grandma trusted me. She wanted someone responsible to handle the property. I felt my fists clench under the table. Responsible? This was the same guy who had been sneaking paperwork around like a con artist. I let the room boil for a moment. Rick shouting. Linda pacing. Sarah nodding smugly, already imagining her cut of Mark's supposed inheritance. Then I spoke. Funny thing about handwriting, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. All eyes turned to me. See, I grew up helping Grandma write her grocery lists. I saw her notes, her birthday cards, her recipes. I know her handwriting better than anyone. Mark stiffened. What's your point? I pulled a folder from my backpack and spread out several of Grandma's old letters across the table. Her graceful loops, her tilted script, undeniable. Then I slid Mark's forgery next to them. The difference was obvious. Linda gasped. Rick leaned in, muttering a curse under his breath. Even Sarah's smug smile faltered. This, I said, tapping the forgery, isn't Grandma's hand. It's sloppy. Uneven. The loops are wrong. The slant is off. And here's the kicker, the date at the top? It's from 3 months ago. You all know Grandma couldn't even hold a pen at that point. Mark's face turned scarlet. You don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out the recorder and hit play. Mrs. Klein's voice filled the room. I saw your cousin Mark at the courthouse. He was asking about property records. Something didn't feel right. The room went dead silent. Mark stammered. This doesn't prove anything. But it did. His voice cracked, his hands shook, his lies collapsed around him like a house of cards. Rick roared with laughter. I knew it. I knew you were too slimy to play straight. Linda pinched the bridge of her nose. Unbelievable. Forging your own mother's will? That's beyond low, Mark. Sarah tried to recover. Maybe he misunderstood. Misunderstood. I snapped. He forged her name. He tried to steal everything while the rest of us were grieving. And you defended him. Sarah's face crumpled. Mark shoved back his chair, his voice rising. You all wanted the house. Don't act like I'm the only one. At least I had the guts to try. The words hung in the air like smoke. And there it was, the truth behind the curtain. None of them cared about Grandma. None of them cared about legacy, or memory, or family. They just wanted the spoils. And in that moment, I realized something. They weren't worth saving. The rest of the night blurred. Yelling. Accusations. Mark storming out, Linda threatening lawyers, Rick pounding the table like a drum. But through it all, I sat quietly, letting the storm rage around me. Because I had already won. My revenge wasn't about stealing the house. It wasn't about walking away with money in my pocket. It was about showing them exactly what they were: greedy, broken, willing to desecrate Grandma's memory for bricks and wood. And I had done that. They would never look at each other the same way again. Trust was shattered. Alliances broken. The war lines were drawn deep and permanent. And me? I walked out with my head high, the lockbox slung over my shoulder. Inside were Grandma's real letters, her real voice. The only pieces of her worth holding onto. They could fight over walls and floorboards. I had her soul. That night, sitting in my car under the streetlight, I felt both heavier and lighter than ever before. Heavier, because I knew the family would never be whole again. Lighter, because I no longer cared. Grandma once told me, family is the only thing you can't replace. She was wrong. Sometimes, family replaces itself with greed, lies, and betrayal. And when that happens, the only thing left to do is walk away with your dignity intact. I wasn't the hero of this story. I wasn't the villain either. I was just the one who refused to be swallowed by their greed. And that was enough. The next morning, I woke up to 47 unread messages in the family group chat. At first, I thought maybe I was dreaming, that the whole ugly scene from Linda's dining room had been just a nightmare brought on by stress. But no. Each notification was proof. My revenge had landed like a meteor, and the aftershocks were rippling through every corner of the family. Linda's messages read like legal briefs. We need mediation immediately. House valuation is the next step. Nobody is allowed to touch the property until we reach a settlement. Rick, of course, was having none of it. To hell with lawyers. That house is staying in the bloodline. Mark should be banned from the property forever. Sarah chimed in sporadically, trying to patch over the chaos. We're all grieving. Mark made mistakes, but he's still family. We should sell and split it, that's what's fair. And then there was Mark. His texts were venomous. He accused me of setting him up, of ruining his future, of turning everyone against him. He claimed the will wasn't forged, that Grandma had written it under his guidance. I didn't respond. Not once. Let them argue. Let them tear each other apart. My silence was louder than anything I could have said. It didn't take long for lawyers to get involved. Linda hired one within the week, dragging everyone into a swamp of legal fees and paperwork. The house sat untouched, windows shuttered, grass overgrown, a shell of what it had been. Neighbors whispered. Mrs. Klein told me she hadn't seen a single relative visit since Grandma's funeral. The property became toxic, like a cursed object. Everyone wanted a piece of it, but nobody could agree on how to slice it. The courts slowed things down even further. Months turned into a year. The house rotted while the family bickered. And me? I stayed away. I'd done my part. I'd pulled the mask off their greed. Watching them choke on it wasn't just satisfying, it was freeing. Birthdays came and went with awkward silences. Thanksgiving was canceled. Christmas turned into fragmented dinners where half the family wasn't invited. I got texts here and there, Rick trying to rally me on his side, Sarah begging me to be reasonable, Linda demanding I testify against Mark. But I didn't pick a side. Because the truth was, there were no sides anymore. Just ruins. I'd drive past Grandma's house sometimes. The porch swing hung crooked. Paint peeled from the shutters. The place looked lonelier than it ever had. It hurt, more than I wanted to admit. Grandma's home had been a safe haven, a place where I learned to ride a bike, where she taught me to play cards, where summer evenings smelled of lilacs and fresh pie. And now it was just a carcass, picked apart by vultures. I wish I could say my revenge ended neatly, with Mark disgraced, Linda humbled, Sarah apologetic, Rick redeemed. But life isn't a movie. Mark doubled down, convinced himself he'd been wronged. Linda buried herself in paperwork. Sarah clung to her illusions of fairness. Rick simmered like a pot left boiling on a stove. And me? I lost them all. Family dinners disappeared. Cousins stopped calling. Holidays became quieter, lonelier. But strangely, I didn't regret it. Because the alternative was worse, letting them rewrite Grandma's legacy, letting them steal what little decency was left. My revenge didn't fix the family. It exposed it. And sometimes exposure is the only cure, even if it leaves scars. Late one night, I sat with one of Grandma's old letters in my lap. It was one she'd written to me when I was 10, the handwriting still neat, the paper yellowed at the edges. "John," it read, "you'll learn one day that family is complicated. People will fight. People will disappoint you. But you must never lose yourself in the mess. Stay kind. Stay strong." I laughed bitterly when I read that. Because kindness hadn't saved me, strength had. Strength to show them what they really were. Did I honor her words? Maybe not perfectly. But I did stay strong. Strong enough to resist being swallowed by their greed. And that, I think, would have made her proud. Eventually, the court forced the house to be sold. It went to a stranger, someone with no ties to our bloodline. The money was divided after endless legal wrangling, smaller slices than anyone wanted eaten away by fees. Nobody was happy. Nobody won. Except me. Because I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about the house anymore. I had Grandma's letters. Her recipes. The memories no one could touch. And I had the satisfaction of knowing I had pulled the curtain back. They could keep pretending, but they'd never forget what I'd shown them. That greed had destroyed us. And that's how my family's greed turned Grandma's house into a battlefield, and how my revenge wasn't about taking the house, but about making sure they saw themselves for what they really were. Do you think I went too far? Or was it the only way to fight back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you've ever seen greed rip a family apart, share your story below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next tale of revenge.